All right, welcome back. We are still in our lesson 6 about the impossible, and we're going to dive right on into this. But last week we talked about over in Jeremiah, God's watching over His word to perform it, and having God's plan. And the 3 things that we talked about on 107 was God's involvement, our cooperation, and then our involvement with others. And so part of our cooperation is you've got to know that you are the only ones who can stop the dream and God's plan for coming to pass. It is your choice. We can blame circumstances, we can blame people, we can blame the enemy, but ultimately it's within us.
Right.
It is on the inside of us, and the only person that can stop that and can abort or kill that is you. It's me. And so over in 1 Peter 5:8 out of the Amplified, it says, be well balanced and be vigilant and cautious at all times. At all times. For that enemy of yours, the devil, roams like a roaring lion, seeking in fierce hunger someone to devour. And that, I think, is such a true statement. I know we've talked about that before we start stepping into some new things. The enemy, when he is at all times seeking someone whom he may devour. And so you've got to know that he will try to devour you. He'll try to distract you by bringing certain people in your life. And I think relationships can really abort what God has for you, because it's contaminating that holiness on the inside of you. It's contaminating that God dream, that God plan. And laziness can do things. We can get busy, but if we're not careful, we're just not taking care of it. I mean, I know Sophia took care of herself when she was pregnant, and I saw my sister, that during those pregnancies, and my sister was high risk, and she really had to pay attention to what she did with herself, how she ate, her exercise, and she was carrying 2, and her risk was really high, but she had to be so careful. And what was so beautiful was even after they were born, they had to go in the NICU for a little while, and there was 24-hour care. So even after the dream comes to pass, is that there's still things you've got to nurture. It's not, okay, well, my baby's here, bye. No, you got to nurture it and grow it and train them up in the Lord, and be like, train the thing. Train them up in the way that they should go. But even before they come, again, it's that 9-month period of, you've experienced that, all the things that you dealt with. So how can you, obviously being a mom, how can you incorporate that into, I know Lainey did that a little bit last time, but just with you being a mom.
I think even being a mom, and you touched on wrong relationships and compromise, can bring such for me, I had a really, really hard pregnancy because I was in compromise. I was compromising in my life. So I was always sick. I was in the hospital. I couldn't keep anything down. I didn't nurture Layla like I would have liked to until I got away from that relationship. But I know that even taking care of your body and getting away from those toxic things that can be stealing what God has for you. I really just remember the day that I just could really love on her when I got away from that relationship, or how I just stopped getting sick or having migraines because I got away from that relationship, and I was just in the presence of God, and I had people praying over me, and I was praying over Layla, and I was praying over myself, and I was making sure I was eating right and drinking the right things so that she could be healthy, because she became so important to me. Because when you're pregnant, it's really no longer about you in your mind. Sometimes it's really about this beautiful child that you're carrying around, and depends on you to put the right food in your body, and making sure that you're exercising right, and just putting that total health in your body, in its mind, spirit, and soul.
What are some of the things, because I don't know this, when you are pregnant, what are some of the things, just natural things that doctors tell you if you're pregnant, stay away from?
You know, I think fish, I really eat a whole lot of things that they were telling you. You have to cook your meat. You know, let's say lunch meat, you know, you couldn't just eat it. You're not supposed to eat it right out of the package. You're supposed to actually warm it up to kill anything that could harm the baby. You know, you're not supposed to drink a lot of caffeine. That's not really good for your baby either. Coffee was hard to get away from. I know when I was pregnant with her, because I just loved it so much, but it just wasn't, you know, I guess they say everything in moderation, but I just completely cut everything out.
And I think too, as you're carrying a baby, you are more self-conscious about that. And I think it's the same way spiritually, is if you want this to carry full term and long term, and you want to see your child grow up and, you know, do all these things, even in the spiritual sense, is that you've got to cut things out, you know, with the relationships, the habits, the attitudes, that anything that can hinder the growth of God's dream, you've got to be willing, and sometimes moderation, but sometimes it is, this isn't bad, but I'm just gonna go ahead and cut it out anyway. And I just think, you know, you've got to know that. And James 4:7 on the top of 110, page 110 says, resist the devil, stand firm against him, and he will flee from you. When standing firm on the lies of the enemy, you'll always lose, if that's what you're believing. But when you stand firm on the promises of God, you'll always win. And I think that's something that you talked about too a moment ago, about praying over Layla, praying over yourself. And you just got to determine, God, no matter what, I'm holding on to the promises. I'm holding on to your dream and the dream that you have for me. And even though I can't see it full term, I don't know what the baby's going to look like, or like Layla is literally a spitting image, I think, of Sophia. The eyes are different, but she looks just like her to me. So does Kaylee. Kaylee looks a lot like you too. Anyway, but even with the nieces, I mean, I think Gemma, my niece, really favors Lainey, and then Rosalie really favors, you know, her dad, Amadeus. And so I think when things are birthed, you don't know what they're going to look like. You don't know how things will, what's their personality going to be like. And I remember even Lainey and Amadeus saying that Gemma was going to be just like Lainey and Rosalie was going to be like just like Amadeus. And even in the womb, when they showed the little sonograms, the pictures, Gemma was always like cuddled up, and Rosalie was always like, hey, I'm here. And when they were born, Gemma was all like, came out like this, and Rosalie literally hands and legs wide open. I'm like, but they spoke things that Gemma would be a lot like Lainey, Rosalie would be a lot like Amadeus. And now that they're here, oh my gosh, it is like, here's Lainey, here's Amadeus. And I think that what you confess in your words and what you're speaking, it will affect, you know, the outcome of that dream. And so it's important that you do not allow yourself, because it's not happening on your timetable, it doesn't look like you thought it would look, maybe in circumstances it didn't come the way that you thought. Like Sophia said earlier, God meets you where you are. And even though she's a single mom and it's been challenging, I have seen God bless her and just do amazing things through her. And so don't sit there and think, well, I did this and I did this and God will never. Oh my gosh, God meets you where you are. Absolutely. And I think that's the thing. My gosh, if God came for perfect humanity, I mean, there'd be no point of Jesus coming, but he came to reconcile us back to him. And so I just think it's awesome that that you know that. So do you have anything else on that one?
When God rewards you for, you know, I can take bad relationships as an example, because it seems like us women, that seems to be our feelings get involved and our emotions get involved. And I think that God sees, well, I know that God sees when we are obedient, when we don't pick up that phone call, or maybe that wrong friend wants you to go hang out and you say, no, I'm not going to do that. He's going to reward that because he sees you, and he sees you being faithful to that. And I think it's just recognizing those things. And sometimes it's hard because it doesn't feel good. You know, we want people to make us feel good, but God's the only one that's going to make us feel good.
Relationships, I think, can be one of the number one contaminators and destroyers of things because we're in the wrong relationship. So we're going to end on the God-given dreams of others and being able to cooperate with others. And Ephesians 4:16 says, "For because of him, the whole body, the church, and all its various parts, closely joined and firmly knit together by the joints and ligaments with which it is supplied, when each part with power adapted to its need is working properly in all its functions, it grows to full maturity, building itself up in love." It doesn't say in pride, in gifts and talents, but it builds itself up in love. As a member of the body of Christ, you and I are responsible to be closely joined and firmly knitted together to carry out what God's plan, whatever God's plan is. Being a supporter of one another. My success in fulfilling God's will is affected by Sophia's success and her fulfilling, and vice versa.
Yes.
Those for you watching, we win when you win.
That's
when
right.
you lose, we lose. It's not this thing of, well, they lost and I won. No, when a part of the body aches, our hearts should ache. If someone you know is living for the Lord and they're not living for the Lord anymore, don't discount them. Pray them and reach out to them, and because when they're lost and they're hurting, we should be the ones that go after them and try to bring them back, to where they need to be. But love, and I love that we build each other up in love, the body of Christ. I am not an only child. I have 2 siblings, but in the body of Christ, you are not the only child.
Right.
If you are an only child, you can have that only child syndrome, but you are in the biggest family business ever. And you cannot be selfish and get caught up in what you're doing while ignoring the help needed by your brothers and sisters in completing their assignments. This is not a competition to see who does the most or who has the most, but you are here to build God's kingdom. And so you've got to ask yourself, are you involved in what others are doing? Because God will see to it that people will get involved with what you're doing. And I've seen that when you get involved in other people, God just sees to it that, when you have something or you have a need, that you are faithful to come along somebody else, and God comes alongside you. Of course, we're referring a lot to the local church and the body of Christ, but it's your family, it's your community, whatever it is. And so I think it's important, that my heart is to help grow Word of Life Center in whatever way that I can to help my parents. It's not just what I want. I know it's what I'm called to do, as well as helping girls and women find their identity. And that's why I'm having all these different amazing women on here with me, because it's not just me, it's them sharing their story. And I get such a joy to hear that. So Sophia, do you have anything you want to add about getting involved with other people?
Getting involved with people is, people need people. God did not make us to be alone. He might make us be alone for a season, but that's still, you have some type of contact with people. And, whether we're in the body of Christ and we're showing love, Jesus' only command when he came back is for us to love. And part of that love is not being selfish, not putting ourselves first, putting others first. Maybe you don't feel like doing something, but you're walking in love through it, and God really does bless you in that. And, people try to self-promote, I think sometimes because they want, maybe something's happened in their life and they want somebody to accept them, but God accepts you right where you are, and you have a place in the body of Christ and in your family. And when you love people, it comes off, and love is so many different things. And so, our goals as Christian and disciples is to love people and to see what their need is, and to, if we can, to help them in that need so that they can be everything that God's called them to be.
Yeah, and I think that's just being